Hi everyone, this is a channel about engines. So today I'll be doing some repairs, warehouse work, gearboxes, an 85 gearbox from a Chinese bus called Kingon. So here you can see the plate, it's made in China. Everything around is in hieroglyphs, only 685, and we can see the gear ratios. 675,083, so there are 6 gears here. An overdrive of 11.5, and that's the oil capacity in liters. So I found the production date here, but that's the production date of this electromagnetic brake. Telma. Well, you can roughly say it's the end of 2013, beginning of 2014. The mileage is about 600,000 kilometers. And there was a problem right here where the electromagnets are. An electromagnetic brake. There's one disc here, and on this side there's another disc just like it, and it started rubbing against the plate that holds the electromagnetic coils. So you can see this is what the plate looks like, for example, one that wasn't really damaged, and this is what the plate looks like that was rubbed by the disc. You can see that it's bent, you can see that it gets really hot, and as the disc rubs against it, it pushes it over here and wears it down. So this is how it's supposed to look, and this is how it actually looks, which means what we're seeing here is this kind of shaft movement. This is the kind of shaft movement we're talking about. When these brake discs, the electromagnetic ones, started moving like this, they began to touch these plates. And here in the front, the primary shaft is also loose. It has this kind of longitudinal movement. And when you turn it, you can hear that something is rattling inside. So, apparently the bearings have fallen apart. Something happened to the bearings. We'll take it apart and check. I'll repeat. This is a Chinese-made gearbox. Everything is in Chinese here. The year of manufacture is somewhere here. I can't say for sure, but it's either 2013 or 2014. This is a 6-speed gearbox without a splitter, 6 gears. So I'm removing the coils. Some bolts came off easily, but some were really tough. I had to use a lot of force. I bought these grills, and you can immediately tell they're from the Chinese auto industry. So there are adjustment plates here. I marked them, and when I take them off, I tie them together and label them. This was from here. Now I'm taking off the second brake disc. Then I remove the bracket that holds the coil. Now I'm unscrewing the speedometer sensor. I prepared a container and I'm draining the oil. The oil, okay, well you can see the oil, all of it, all the metal shavings. It's like paint, like silver paint. There's so much shavings in there, and they're really, really fine. So maybe these shavings are even aluminum. Maybe it even ate away at the gearbox housing itself, like where the bearing seat is, because there's so much shavings. The oil level is normal at 11 liters. Next, I need to remove the flange and rear cover. Alright, so I removed the flange, and you can see the seal there. There's the seal, it got pushed out from there.
Now I'm removing the casing.
We can see here there's a stop bolt, a stop ball joint, let's say, for the clutch fork. It's already completely worn out too, so it also needs to be replaced. Alright, next I'm removing the cup. I'm removing the front cover. And I just want to say, you can immediately feel it's from China. I don't know how to explain it, but you can instantly tell it's made in China. The box, the bolts, for example, yes, they should all be in this condition, but when I unscrew them, they're all like this, you know? I mean, they're all oxidized, all rusty. Things are especially bad where they are through holes like this on the opposite side. Here it's closed, but here it's through. Here I have a bolt. I mean, everything got oxidized there, so much that the bolt came out together with the thread from the aluminum, so the whole thread is ruined. I already sprayed it with WD-40 here and tapped it, but that's it, the thread is ruined. I began unscrewing the nearby bolt. It initially started coming out, but then the head snapped off entirely. So, before that there were bolts here, but you can tell it's not the same. I mean, it oxidizes and rusts. I don't know what's happening to it. Now everything here is kind of rough, but it's not critical. You can shoot, you can re-rifle it, but still. So in moments like this, you can immediately feel it. Like when you take out the oil deflector washer, you can see that it's all worn out. Now I'm removing the front cover. Alright, so I've removed the front cover, and right away what we can see is the bearing. I mean, you can see that all the bearings are worn out. Basically just as I thought, that the bearings have failed. Well, naturally I'll check the cones and rings. Those probably got damaged too. So now I need to remove the gear shifting mechanism. Next, I need to take out the reverse gear. I'll open this cover and take out this shaft. So, this is the shaft that holds the intermediate reverse gear. Here is the gear, and here is the shaft. We need to knock the shaft out and remove the gear. You can knock it out from the inside, or you can use a puller here, or just screw in a bolt and try to pry it out with a crowbar. So I don't mix up how it was positioned. I mark the teeth with a marker, and I also marked the housing on this side so that it goes back exactly where it was, just like it was worn in. Next, I unscrew these two bolts. This is the fork shaft, here they are, which engage 5th and 6th gear. Since our gearbox is an overdrive, the gear ratio is less than 1. So, we have direct drive. This is the input shaft for 5th gear, and this gear here is for 6th gear. That's why this fork works through a lever, meaning the other forks work directly, but this one uses a lever so that there isn't any misalignment on the gear shift lever. Now I'm unscrewing this holder and taking out both shafts along with the forks. Also, I need to unscrew the back part of the gearbox here on the side of the gear shifter. These are plugs and a sensor. The sensor is likely for reverse gear and the others are just plugs. When installing the forks, so that I can guide them in there, that's why I'll unscrew them, so I can also pry the forks. I turned the gearbox over, hooked it with a tether, and now I'll lift the housing. Thank you. Okay, well, I got everything out. Basically, there don't seem to be any issues with the gears. The gears all look good. We have a sensor going to the speedometer. I've removed all the shafts. I'll investigate and check the bearings. I'll likely disassemble the secondary shaft to inspect the cones, rings, and all the bearings. We can also see there's a deposit here, this black residue, which shouldn't be there. The gearbox was just running on bad oil. Over there, where the plugs are, there are these retainers. They stick out. I'll show and explain all of this during reassembly. Apparently, because of this oil, it wore out this bearing. You can see on the input shaft that all the rollers are worn out, and the output shaft started pushing forward here, and that's it. It started shifting here, and accordingly the brake disc started pressing against these plates of these coils. Apparently it happened because of this bearing. Anyway, I'm going to take everything apart now and inspect it. At the very least, all the bearings in this gearbox will be replaced. Like I said, it's already done about 600,000 kilometers. At the very least, all the bearings will be replaced. And when I take it apart, the cone rings will probably come out as well. This is a Chinese-made gearbox. I showed the nameplate at the beginning of the video. So here's this gearbox. It's also a 6-speed. It also has the same gear ratios as that other gearbox, 670, 50, 83, but this gearbox is from a bus. It's made by ZF Kama, but it has a different model listed on its nameplate. 1200. There are also the English letters BQ here. So the other one is 685 and this one is 6S1200. But the housings are absolutely identical. Well, the difference is like this. Not really a difference, just the back covers, but that's all minor stuff. The point is that this transmission has done less than 200,000 kilometers. It came from a bus. And after being removed, it sat unused for a long time. It's been lying around like this for several years. But the point is, it should be like new inside, meaning less than 200,000 kilometers. What's the point right now? Well, yeah. It also has another issue here. Its body is cracked in this spot, so there's a crack running all along the body. But the internals, they should all be in perfect condition. So now I'm going to take it apart and check. If everything fits in that gearbox, the Chinese one, then I'll just take all the internals from this gearbox. All the shafts, the primary, secondary, intermediate. Basically, I'll put everything into that gearbox, into that housing. That's the plan, so I don't have to buy anything to repair that gearbox. This gearbox is almost new with less than 200,000 miles. The bus has been running for 2 years and is a new vehicle. Alright, so I'm taking it apart. I've removed the cover, removed the flange, and right away I see the number 1311 304 248. That's the secondary shaft number. Now I look, and this one also had 1311 304 248. So we can see that the secondary shaft is absolutely identical, just as I thought. Most likely the whole gearbox is absolutely identical, even though the gearbox models are different. One is produced in Russia, the other is produced in China. So next I'm comparing the input shafts. This one is my Chinese shaft and this one is my sample. We look at the number on the Chinese shaft. 1,310, 302, 1, 1,310, 302, 1. So we see that the input shafts are absolutely identical. This is the condition of the Chinese shaft, and this is the condition of the Z.F shaft. By the way, there was still factory oil poured in here. We can see that it is clean after 200,000. There's no residue, nothing at all. This is the oil recommended by the manufacturer. Here it's already clear that they experimented, poured in different oils. That's why we see this situation. People chose whatever was cheaper. Alright, next I see the intermediate shaft number is 1310. 300 3076. Alright, now let's check the number of the Chinese shaft. 1,310, 303.76. So we see that everything is absolutely identical. 1,311, 304, 255. This is for Zavkama 1334, 255. So next, let's look at the cone number 13103020313103023. There's no need for further comparison. It's clear that everything is the same. So what I did was I replaced the rack from the box that was requested by Miss A. For the Chinese one that I'm going to assemble, I replaced all the bushings and bearings, meaning I took the entire set from that box. I'll leave all the internals in this housing, so I installed the retainers and put in the clutch. According to updated information, this gearbox didn't run 200,000, but 100,000, it worked there for about a year. So basically you could say it's new, it just went through the break-in period. Considering its condition, the gearbox looks perfect, as if it were brand new. If you look at the splines here, the ones on the coupling, for example, you can see, well, you can't see any wear, they look like new. If you look at the splines on the cone, on the ring, everything is also perfect. The ring fits, let's see how it fits. The gap is just a fraction of a millimeter, so everything is like new. So what I do is I install the cover. I have a hole in my workbench. I install the cover more or less evenly. I put a small board under here. And first I install the primary shaft. Then I put the ring and the cone onto the shaft. Now I need to install the shafts, the secondary shaft and the intermediate one. And at the same time, I also need to install all these forks right away, that is the 3 sliders, and put these forks in place. So, it's a complicated process. So now I need to bend the shaft aside like this and put the secondary shaft in this place. Then I'll connect them like this. I bent the shaft like this with a pry bar. This shaft goes this way. I lifted this shaft a bit, it was hanging like this, and now I'm bringing them together. So I set the shafts like this, and now my task is to install the forks. That is, it's also difficult right now because I have to fit each fork in place. And there's also a deep guide here, so it tends to stand perpendicular in this plane. But I need to fit those protruding forks in there. So, well, I'll also say there's a way you can just assemble these shafts. Put some bottles or some guides under them, set them up somehow, tie them together, and put the housing on first. Well, I don't know. I mean, you have to struggle a bit here, but at least everything is in place right away and the housing just closes up. So what I do is I use a pry bar like this, lift it up with the pry bar, put a support under here, found a plate, and put spaces here so it doesn't wobble this way. And now I'm installing the forks. I've installed it roughly like this. Now I'll take out these supports and adjust it so everything fits properly. When I installed the rear ones, they didn't fit properly, and I had to lift it up a bit and also lift this fork and direct it here again. Well, I'll tell you this method. It's easier in some ways, harder in others, but overall it's easier. The thing is, you don't need to set up the shafts or make any templates. The template is already there. This cover here, but it's more difficult again because these forks are hard to insert, so you have to twist them in. So I've assembled it both ways, but now I've decided to do it this way. Now my task is to check that all the forks are sitting on the couplings. So I'm checking the reverse gear, making sure that the ends are in place. Next, 1, 2. Here my slider is in place. On this side my slider is also in place. And here there are 3 more sliders. Right here, you can see it. So you can also see that it's in the coupling. 3rd and 4th gear, there are 2 sliders here. So this one is in place, this one is in place. And for 5th and 6th, let's check. This one is also in place. And this one is in place for 5th and 6th. You also need to make sure that this ball doesn't pop out, because if you just pull it to the side, it'll just fall out. Before putting on this top cover, I tie this place with a simple thin thread. If the thread gets inside, it's not a big deal. There's no oil pump here, nothing like that, so nothing will happen to the thread. It's just so that it doesn't fall out. Before I insert these side holders, these bolts I put in the thread. But basically everything is assembled here. My main shaft, or rather the bearing of the main shaft, isn't seated enough. I pressed it in, but it needs to go a bit further. That's why my secondary shaft is now resting on the main shaft. And that's why there's a slight difference in height, just a couple of millimeters. But that's a minor detail. And about the rust, like I said, the gearbox sat for about 3 or 4 years, not... Sure, but it's that kind of rust. You can just wipe it off with your finger. It's not deep, just surface corrosion, nothing serious, probably from condensation, and it was turned over from time to time. Now my task is to degrease it again with solvent, apply sealant and put the cover on. Next I need to insert these retainers into these holes, right here in this spot. Before shifting gears, they don't lock the fork in a certain middle position. For example, this is third gear, this is fourth. All the retainers are in place. I put a little grease there so they would stay in place a bit. Maybe I'll be turning the housing now so it doesn't fall out. So I degreased everything since I applied sealant with solvent. Here, so that this ball joint, the connection, doesn't fall out between the fork and the shaft, I put on a rubber boot. Then I'll cut it through this opening and take it out, so it's temporary. That's how I set the approximate spacing for the forks. So these two should be a bit closer together, and these two a bit farther apart. Anyway, when I put the case on, I'll have to move them a bit anyway. I don't know yet, maybe the rubber will get in the way, we'll see. Well, that's it basically. Everything's ready. I'm putting the case on. The plugs don't fit here. This one seems a bit tilted. I just adjusted them slightly from here. So two of them went in. The third one is also fitting. So we look here, this one fits, this one fits. So it turns out there's still one that doesn't go in. I'm checking that my ball is sitting in place, that it hasn't fallen out. Okay, moving on. I'm checking that everything is fine with me. You sit in place, that is, you can see here is one shaft, 2, 3, 4, all the shafts are in place and all the retainers are in place. You must check this. Okay, next the forks are in place. Now I need to tighten these bolts, not to misalign the guides, otherwise the cover will fall off. Tighten one bolt on this side, one on that side, and take this out. Here's my rubber piece, that's all. So I line it. I've already tightened the hole on that side. Now I line it up roughly evenly like this. Okay, next. So I took out the rubber piece. It's not working. The gear is engaged. Now I'll tighten it and it will all fit into place. So, I removed this cover because there was a lot of shavings under it. To clean all that out, I took it off and cleaned everything, washed it. Now I'll show you how it goes on. So there's a thrust washer. There's a number, even this washer goes like this on the bearing side, then goes a ring like this, and then the cover goes on. So next I install the reverse gear. When disassembling, I made marks here with markers, and on the gear itself with a marker. That is so that I can put it back in the same position it was working in. Now the shaft is stuck. I need to screw a bolt in here. With the limiter, the shaft wouldn't come out. Alright, that's it. Reverse gear is in place. Now I'm going to close the cover. So I'm closing the reverse gear cover. The gasket I have is old. I don't have a full set for this gearbox at all. So I'm using old gaskets with sealant in some places. And in others, I'm making new homemade ones. That's how the gasket is installed. Reverse gear is in place. Now I'll immediately install the rear cover. No. Next I install the rear cover, the one that goes under the flange, the bearing, leaving the old one. The old oil seals are all soft, all good. The old rubber gasket, I just smeared it with sealant. In some cases it's even easier to leave these old gaskets than to put in new ones, which will harden in a month and start leaking. More. Basically, this cover can be installed in any position, however you like. But you can use the casting as a guide. So I look at this spot, there's a rib here, and I see the imprint of the rib on the cover. So basically we put it back exactly the way it was before. Now that means I'm going to install the joint. I also want to show you. There's a system like this here, right in this spot. There's something like a little cup. Now it's on the second course. I'll show you what kind of cup is there. Oil flows into it, the oil gears take oil from it, and through this channel it drains here by gravity, and it ends up here. There's a hole here, it's drilled in the block. So the oil is supplied to this bearing by gravity, without pressure, without a pump. But the channel is made, it's quite a clever system. Now I'll show you what this looks like. This is the oil collection cup. This is what it looks like. Here it is. So the primary part rotates, and due to centrifugal force, the oil hits here, drains into this cup, and then goes further through the hole. There. That's their channel. Here's the drilling. This comes in, and this is the washer I installed. Here it is with these holes and slots. So this area is filled with oil. It stays there, and it flows by gravity to the bearing. This solution is made to prevent oil starvation of the bearing. Alright, next I install the cup. I'm using the old gasket. I removed it carefully. It didn't even come off the cup. I just apply some sealant and it's fine. It'll work well. The oil seal is also old. I tightened the spring here a bit, added a few drops of oil so the seal goes in smoothly without any scoring. So after I tighten the cup, the shaft has no play at all because there's a bearing here. There are tapered rollers here. If it were just a ball bearing, there would be a bit of play, or if it were just a regular roller. But these are tapered rollers. I don't have them, so mine spins freely. Play. Next, I'm installing the back cover. Like this. I was about to install FLIANES, but when I looked inside, I realized I forgot to install the speedometer drive. It's not a big deal, I just took the cover off again. So before installing the cover, you need to install the speedometer drive first. This is how it just fits on, and then the flange presses it down so it doesn't turn anymore. So sometimes you make this mistake, you forget to install the speedometer drive all the time. Well, okay, I put the speedometer drive in and put the cover back on. So everything is installed. The speedometer drive, the cover is in place. Now I'm installing the flanges. So, as always, I coat the splines with sealant. Sometimes oil leaks between the shafts and splines, so that's why I always do it this way. Alright, that's it. I'm installing it. The flange. Now, you don't need to tighten it, but it should turn. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to engage 2 gears. That's it, I've engaged 2 gears and the gearbox didn't jam. Be sure to tap it, just in case something is out of place. Tap it so it sits properly and then tighten it. So I've tightened the flange, now I need to put on this kind of stopper. So the top hole is for the reverse gear fork. This is the reverse gear sensor and these are just plugs. These holes are needed to access the retainers that hold the forks in place. These bolts that hold the fork for 5th and 6th gears are not tightened yet. Next, I will install the gear shifting mechanism. Now I need to take a look at the gear shifting mechanism, or maybe it's more correct to call it the gear selector mechanism, but it doesn't matter. I see here that my shaft has a bit of play, right? So, this gearbox has done about 500,000 or 600,000 kilometers, and here is the play in the shaft. So we can see that there is already a gap between the oil seals and the shaft. That's why now I'll open this cover and check the condition of the shaft, the oil seals, and the bushing. And also there's this kind of plate that goes here. You could call it a safety device for disconnecting two gears. If you look at the slot, only one fork can fit into it. Two gears can no longer be engaged at the same time. That is, this is our third and fourth gears. This is our fifth, sixth, first and second gears. And this one here is our reverse gear. So here I am. When you engage reverse, you need to apply a little extra force to the lever to shift into reverse. This is controlled by this lock here, which creates extra resistance when engaging reverse gear. So I can't overcome it with just my hand anymore. The shaft condition is still perfect at 500,000 to 600,000 kilometers, which is just right. You can see from the condition of the oil seals that they've all completely settled and hardened, meaning water has started to get in, but the shaft hasn't failed yet, so the shaft is still in good condition. I'm just going to replace these oil seals now, change the bushing, and that's it. So I'll put a new bushing in the cover. A new oil seal, a new dust cover, and the small lower oil seal. I replaced everything, put in the new bushing, and installed the oil seals. There's also a small oil seal on the opposite side, and there's a gap between the oil seals and the bushing. I filled this gap with grease. So basically it's a system where there should be grease in there, and this part holds the grease and keeps it in place. I coated the small oil seal with sealant. I'm not putting it on. As you can see, after replacing the bushing and oil seals, there's no play at all, so now it fits very tightly. So this kind of minimal repair will help save this shaft, which is a very expensive shaft. Alright, next I'm installing the gear shifting mechanism back in place. Here, all my forks are in the neutral position, and here, all my levers are also in the neutral position. So, this plate for the gear engagement safety is installed in place. It sits like this, with this part as the guide. This is how it fits. I applied some sealant here and I'm installing it. Alright, the cup is in place, the covers are in place, now I'll install the boot. So, I'm not installing the clutch fork yet. The clutch fork will be new. It's still on the way. We ordered it. It's still coming. So there's this kind of thrust ball here. You can see how worn it is. It screws in here and is adjusted from the opposite side. It moves. And as for the fork, you can see the wear here. So it's almost worn through. And it's eaten away. This ball goes in here like this. So it's almost completely worn through. That's why this will be new, and here where the rod from the cylinder goes in as well. And here where the release bearing sits, the thrust side surfaces have also been worn down, as well as these end surfaces. So, I'm waiting for a new fork for now. Next, I'm installing the coil mounting bracket. Next, I'm installing the electromagnetic disc. Brake. Alright, I've tightened all the discs. Now I'm installing the coils, the electromagnetic brake. So there are adjustment washers. I marked how they were positioned. So it's the first set, the first plates. 2, 3, 4, 4 bundles are connected. So I tightened the bolts a little, left them so there would be a gap. I'll sort out the adjustment plates and insert them. All the coils are in place, tightened. Now I'm installing the speedometer sensor back in place. The gearbox is now fully assembled. All the gears, everything shifts, everything is fine. It's still without oil, that's why it rattles a bit. Once I fill it with oil, it'll work smoothly. It's still empty. Next, another brake disc like this one is installed here, but it needs to be installed on site. First of all, you still need to even it out, grind it a little with an angle grinder, and install it on site because the frame gets in the way there. First the gearbox will be installed in place, then this disc, and basically that's it. Actually, I don't have a fork. Here you just screw in the pin and it just goes onto this pin, fits on. That's how the video turned out. Thank you all for watching. Good luck to everyone. Bye.